This is Radio Hereford FC, the home of the Bulls.
Hello and welcome back to the latest edition of the Bullscast with me, George Holloway. This week we're looking back at Hereford's exit from the FA Trophy at the hands of AFC Fylde after a penalty shootout defeat. We'll review all of the action from an entertaining tie before looking ahead to Hereford's trip to Kings Lynn in the National League North this Saturday. As always, I'm joined by Keith Hall. Keith, thanks for joining me for the first Bullscast of the new year, 2026. Did you have a good Christmas?
Yeah, not so bad at all. Nice quiet one, yeah.
It was a busy period for Hereford, obviously losing at home to Kiddie and then getting a really good draw away at Merthyr thanks to a last gasp equaliser from Carl Howkins. Just before we move on to the AFC Fylde draw in the FA Trophy, Keith, I'm sure you want to have a few words on Eric Redrobe, who passed away recently.
Yeah, really sad to hear that he's gone at the age of 81. A catalyst for Hereford back in the very first year in the Football League. He became a really firm favourite with the fans because he was so direct, body checks, shoulder charges, that sort of thing. He didn't seem to care too much as long as the ball went into the back of the net. He cared a little about how it got there. He was that sort of player and a real legend up at Southport before he joined Hereford. I think Southport still probably consider him the best player that they've ever had. So that just shows you, his strength of character as much as anything else. I worked with him a couple of times when he was a co-commentator, as it were, and he was as direct in his views as he was direct as a player. If he'd got an idea about something, he'd make sure you knew about it. I think one of the things he dislikes about football or disliked about football in recent years is he felt that players weren't as honest as they used to be and weren't giving their all for the cause, and maybe a little bit too much play acting for him because, King Eric was a battering ram and used a shoulder charge, etc. to good effect. One little story, which I'm not sure everybody knows about, but supporters of a certain generation will remember John Burridge, a famous goalkeeper across the generations, really. But he was a young 16-year-old up at Workington, who were a Football League team at the time, playing against Southport. And in his autobiography, John Burridge says of Redrobe, he had a reputation for being a bit of a hard man. At corner kicks, he would be growling under his breath that he was going to kill you. True to his word, he hammered into me and broke my rib. I was in absolute agony and I was still recovering from a smashed nose. And now I had a cracked rib to add to the broken bones collection. And that sort of sums up Eric completely.
And a real key member, Keith, of the glory years.
Yeah, making their way up. I think he was crucial. I don't think if Hereford hadn't signed Redrobe or a player of a similar ilk, maybe they wouldn't have gone up. They got the skill. Gregory was a bit of a hard man as well. David Rudge out on the flanks. You got Jones, McLaughlin, central defenders. But it just needed that extra spark. And I always remember when the ball was anywhere near the box, the decibel level from Meadow End just used to go up to a crescendo because he was all action. He put everything into every single game and the crowd would just respond to it. And it was a fantastic time to be supporting Hereford United.
Coming back later on in the 70s, Keith, shows you what Hereford United meant to him.
Yeah, he really did. And it was noticeable as well that whenever he was the guest of honour, either up at Hague Avenue or at Edgar Street, he made very, very carefully out towards the centre circle. He'd literally walk on the halfway line because he didn't want to side with either the Southport supporters or the Hereford supporters. But he did say at one stage that he thought he was in dreamland at Hereford at the time because he really liked the atmosphere. There are a whole host of stories from his days at Edgar Street, in and out of the field of play. But, he really took to Hereford back in the day. I think he was only on £27 a week. Just shows you how football's changed.
Very sad news, and our thoughts are with his friends and family at this time. So, on to Saturday's match. We were meant to be talking about an away trip to Alfreton on the 3rd of January, but of course that was postponed due to the bad weather. That's now been moved to the 17th of March. FA Trophy action went ahead though, Keith, at home to Fylde in the 4th round. A dramatic 2-2 draw in normal time, followed by a spot kick defeat. There was plenty of action.
Yeah, it was quite dramatic, wasn't it? Especially in the second half, Hereford having to claw their way back into the match. No little spirit in the Hereford side. They got the desire to get back in there. I think generally the supporters looked at that as a very encouraging sign that the players will not give up.
Fylde took the lead in controversial circumstances, shall we say, from the spot, and it involved a handball from Gus Mafuta.
Yeah, I'm still not convinced, having looked at the highlights. We had Mark Ammons alongside us in the Radio Hereford commentary box on Saturday. He's a qualified referee, and he wasn't sure it was a pen either because it was shot at such velocity. And if you look at the footage, Gus Mafuta is actually turning back away from the shot when it hits him on the arm. So, how's he supposed to get out of the way? He may well have hit the upper arm, but it wasn't intentional. Is that really a penalty when you get a ferocious effort straight at you? There's very little you can do about it.
The spot kick was consummately put away by Danny Ormerod, Keith.
Yeah, he's their sort of number one outlet up front. I think without his goals, they wouldn't be quite the force they were. I think Houghton used to play for them. He went to Forest Green towards the end of last season. And they don't have that real impetus from midfield. Shots on goal from range, the ball into the feet of Danny Ormerod, turning a defender. He's likely to score, and he was very calm with that penalty kick.
The first half very much belonged to Fylde. We saw, should I say, their ball-keeping capabilities, particularly in the middle of the park, and they doubled their lead from a corner thanks to Max Taylor's stray boot.
Yeah, he just hooked it back from whence it came, really. It looped over and dropped into the back of the net from our position. I wasn't sure whether it had actually gone over the bar to start with, but he didn't really connect with it too much, otherwise it might have gone over. So he just got enough force on the ball for it to just drop into the back of the net. So unfortunate for Hereford at the time, but we were there up against it 2-0 at half-time.
I imagine a lot of fans listening in and also watching at Edgar Street would have feared the worst going into half-time, 2-0 down at home to such a great side as Fylde, of course, second in the National League North at the moment. But Hereford came out for the second half, Keith, with a lot more energy, and Lawson Diath halved the deficit immediately after the break.
Yeah, and what a pass it was from Keenan Quansah as well to release him. He seemed to make sort of a late run, which confused the Fylde defence, and it was a very, very cool and composed finish across the keeper into the bottom corner. So I fully agreed, actually, with the sponsors that Lawson Diath was man of the match on Saturday, and that goal spurred Hereford on.
Just a quick word on Lawson Diath there, Keith. As you say, he got man of the match on Saturday. He's always been a very tenacious player in the heart of the Boars midfield, but do you think he's just stepped it up a level this season?
Yeah, I just wonder whether he was carrying a knock at some stage in the early months of the season, because he wasn't as instrumental as he can be, and it certainly was at the weekend. And it was his work rate as well. He was up and down that pitch throughout. He was actually running back, chasing back to put blocks in defensively. It wasn't just going forward. It was an all-action display from him, 100% effort, and generally the supporters will always get behind you, even if you're not the greatest player in the world. If you're giving the Bulls shirt 100%, people will get behind you, and that's what everybody needs to do between now and the end of the season.
And a brilliant finish, of course, for that first goal, chipping it over the legs of Boys. And I'm sure, like me, Keith, you were looking down at the linesman on this near side to see whether the offside flag was going to go up.
Yeah, I did, to be fair, but, it was such a quality ball, and off went Lawson to finish, so we're back in the match.
Before the eventual equaliser came from Lewis Hudson, Hereford produced a couple of brilliant acrobatic efforts that were inches away from bringing them level.
Oh, absolutely tremendous, weren't they? One from Lawson Diath again, and one from the new signing Justin Donovan, which struck the top of the crossbar and went over. One fantastic save from compact boys who was not normally going to play, I don't think, because Zach Jones is Fylde's number one, but you can just see the competition for places up at Fylde because boys, tremendous save to keep out the Lawson Diath effort, and then he was not too far away, even if he really may have got fingertips to it, we're not quite sure, but certainly the ball struck the crossbar and went over from that Donowa effort, and he actually kept Fylde in the game in the second half because Hereford were actually firmly on top.
Yeah, either of those that went in, both would have, I'm sure, been goal of the season contenders. The equaliser eventually came, Keith, with 2 minutes remaining, thanks to the skipper, Lewis Hudson. And after those acrobatic efforts, I'm sure many fans inside Edgar Street would have thought that it just wouldn't have been Hereford's day, but Lewis Hudson was in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, it's good to see him there just outside the penalty area to start with, and then the clearance was made, but it didn't really come out too far, and he just swept in and threw a cluster of players into the back of the net to send everybody into pandemonium at the Meadow end, because everybody thought that, well, now we've got a chance with a few minutes to go to even go on and win it, and the least welcomed aspect of that would be that it would go to penalties. But from 2-0 down at half-time to get to penalties, I think everybody was on a bit of a high, to say the least.
Our co-commentator Mark Ammon said throughout the commentary about players just taking that little bit of risk, about gambling, and Hudson did that.
Yeah, Hereford 2-0 down, absolutely nothing to lose from there on in. Sort of questioned Fylde a little bit as to why they weren't able to close the game out, but Hereford just putting that extra pressure on them caused opportunities, and as you say, Hudson was in the right place at the right time to follow it in, much like he was actually at Merthyr. So let's hope he's got that in his armoury a few more times between now and the end of the season.
So we're both sides unable to find a winner. We went to penalties and both had one on-spot kicks in the previous round. Of course, Hereford winning against Radcliffe, but it was Fylde's day on Saturday, Keith, with Campbell and Diath failing to convert from the spot.
Yeah, it was. It was only Eustabasi who actually missed or had his penalty kick saved. And we're always worried about Eustabasi because he's always seemed to do something against Hereford and score. But he couldn't do it from a penalty on this occasion. But the damage had been done with Campbell and Diath's spot kicks, really. And, Fylde at that stage were 3-1 up. And it was Keziah Martin who got one to make it 2-3. Eustabasi missed or had it saved. So still hope for Hereford if White could score. And what an outrageous spot kick that was. It just dinked it over the goalkeeper into the back of the net to make it 3-3. But then Corey Whelan did the necessary for the Coasters. And so we went out 4-3. But very dramatic finish, wasn't it?
Are you in the camp that penalties are simply just a lottery, Keith, or that they're very methodical and that you can improve on them?
I think both, really. You can be methodical about it. You know what you're going to do. But there again, the goalkeeper, if he gets information about where you're going to play it, if you don't vary it too often, the shot isn't struck particularly fiercely, it's easier to save. Then again, a player will just put the ball down and smash it straight down the middle. So if you decide to dive one way or the other, you're not going to save it. So yeah, it is very much a lottery, but I think, repetition does help. And confidence certainly helps, because I don't think many players would convert a penalty as Jaden White did.
So Fylde move on to the 5th round of the FA Trophy. They pick up just around about £5,000 for their efforts. Hereford receive just over 1,000 for their troubles after being 4th round losers. After exiting the FA Trophy and the County Challenge Cup this week, Hereford's sole focus for the remainder of the season will be on the National League North. Here's what's coming up in the division this weekend. Bedford are at home to Southport, while Marine travel to Buxton. It's Chester versus Chorley and Curzon Ashton versus Telford. Alfreton pay a visit to Darlington, while Fylde hosts Scarborough. Kidderminster are at home to Worksop, while Macclesfield, fresh off their FA Cup victory over Crystal Palace, host Oxford City. Merthyr are at home to Peterborough Sports. League leaders South Shields host Leamington, while Radcliffe travel to Spennymoor. So it's a trip to Norfolk this Saturday for the Bulls as they take on Kings Lynn. The Linnets are full-time but are down in 17th position at the moment and have lost their last 2 games. I'm sure many Linnets fans, Keith, would have been hoping for a little bit more this season.
Yeah, I think they would. Obviously, there was a bit of financial turmoil at one stage, so they had to get new investment in, and they've not really picked up too much from that. Ian Culverhouse is back there, 3rd time he's been a manager down there at the Walks. Very good manager. He does tend to have the ability to change things even during a game. If he can spot a weakness in the opposition, he generally, if he's got the players to do it, he'll mix things about a little bit. So I'm a little bit surprised that they're as low as 17th in the table, just 6 places above Hereford. They've got 7 points more than the Bulls, but they have played 4 games more, so they could yet get sucked in to the relegation scrap. They've not won in the last 6, 3 draws and 3 defeats, haven't won since the back end of November. But on the flip side, they've scored in every home game bar 2. They lost 1-0 to Harriers and 2-0 to Chester. But they score goals, but they're going to concede as well. So the onus is up to Hereford. We always mention it. Try and take the game to the home side and get that first goal, which is eluding Hereford so often at the moment.
The pitch at the Walks isn't always in the best of condition. So does that maybe play a part in them having such a strong home record?
Well, it could do, because it's usually sticky there. Number of late call-offs, certainly in the last few seasons. They may have rectified that, and we won't know until the weekend, of course. The last thing you want as a spectator is to go along there, get sort of 2-3 hours up the road, and then find the game's called off after 2 o'clock maybe. So hopefully that doesn't happen. It doesn't seem to drain well. Certainly in the past it didn't. Let's hope it doesn't become waterlogged and we can get this game on.
So where are the main threats coming from Ian Culverhouse's side?
Briodney Morgan, who's on loan from Ipswich, that actually ended on Monday, but they've got another young striker, this time from Norwich. They always seem to get players from the East Anglian area, under 21. He's only aged 19 and he could be a spark up front, and Hereford will look after him. And Simone Trosso, I think you pronounce it. He's from Milton Keynes, a creator, a playmaker. Again, just a youngster, aged 18. But from all accounts, he is their dynamic player, technically gifted, as they call it, in midfield. And alongside Michael Clunan, the captain, who's always played well, I feel, against Hereford. He went to Scunthorpe for a while, but he's back at Kings Lynn now. He's a sort of player I'd love to see in a Hereford shirt, because he marshals, he shouts, he organises from that central area, and sometimes you want that sort of general on the pitch.
With the attacking prowess that Kings Lynn possess, Keith, do you think the pace of Keenan Kwanzaa, who has come in for one of either Matt Preston or Kai Howkins in recent weeks, will help to nullify that threat?
Yeah, I think he's done really well, hasn't he, in the last 6-7 weeks probably. And yeah, he's a foil then for more direct central defender that tends to attack the ball, and he can sort of sweep up and use that pace. Don't know, many supporters, I know it's not quite the same level, but I always remember Des Walker at Nottingham Forest. He'd be so quick that if the first defender made a mistake or there's a ball through, Walker would suddenly get there. Now, he's not, I don't think Keenan Kwanzaa's quite in at that level, but he does tend to cover across the defender. And if you have 2 tall central defenders in Matt Preston and Carl Howkins, that extra bit of speed certainly helps.
Do you feel that the 4 goals in 2 games from Hereford, of course 2-2 draw at Merthyr and then a 2-2 draw at home to Fylde, will give Paul Caddis and some Bulls fans optimism that they can go toe-to-toe with a side like Kings Lynn?
Well, we haven't won at the Walks until last season. It's going to take that sort of grit, determination, focus, concentration, resolve, all those attributes. That's what they need to do to get a result at Kings Lynn. I'm looking at a draw, to be honest, because they are the draw specialists in the league. 10 matches they've drawn out of their 25, and a lot at home. Telford, Darlington, Macclesfield and Peterborough Sports have all drawn with, and never really put anybody to the sword apart from Merthyr, funnily enough. very early in the season. They beat Merthyr 4-0. Probably tells you more about Merthyr's defence than anything else. Perhaps they hadn't hit the straps with scoring at the other end at Merthyr on that particular afternoon. But yeah, that's what Hereford have got to do. That characterises what Paul Caddis has been saying. They've now got to start winning matches. But I would actually take a point at Kings Lynn right now.
Have the last two performances, particularly in the second half against Fylde, made you more hopeful about the remainder of the season?
I mean, Merthyr were right up there and Fylde were up there. You could say if that had been a league game, we've just drawn 2-2 with Fylde, 2-2 with Merthyr. So in that respect, you'd have to be encouraged by it. Yes, I know the detractors, the critics will say, well, you're still in the bottom four. You're not getting the victories necessary to get yourself out of it. And we're a bit worried still about the front line. Is there enough support? Andy Williams is stepping forward with a few goals, but he needs support either alongside him or from midfield players who've got an eye for goal. The Bulls can rectify that. Little bit disappointed about Sam Osborne being offered what seems to be an 18-month contract. And one of the headlines coming out of it is he didn't want to sign because he didn't know what league Hereford are going to be in next season. Well, I'll get it from that point of view, but maybe there could be a release clause or something like that in a contract. I don't know. Just seemed a bit strange because if Sam Osborne was in the Hereford team, you'd think they're not going to stay down there too long because he was scoring goals for fun towards the back end of the loan deal. But we'll see what happens at Alfreton. It's up to Hereford to start taking charge of a match rather than always being on the back foot and having to fight back. They're showing that resolve. But can we just take that a stage further and actually produce a good performance for 90 minutes, not 45, but 90, and start getting victories, especially at home. We've got so many games to catch up with at Edgar Street. Yeah, they've got to nurse the pitch, as Stig was talking about, the chairman, saying, well, yeah, we're going to have to nurse the pitch through until the summer. But I think spectators just want them to have a go. Just have a go. If you're going to lose, go down with spirit.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Bullscast. We'll be back next week to look ahead to the home fixture against Spennymoor. Until then, it's bye for now.
This is Radio Hereford FC, the home of the Bulls.